There is a moment in every political crisis when the people who built the system decide they can no longer watch it be dismantled. Zimbabwe just reached that moment. And the men who have spoken are not politicians, they are not activists, they are not opposition voices hungry for power or court applicants building legal arguments. They are the architects of the institution that everyone in Harare claims to represent. And they are furious. Forget everything you know about how political statements usually sound in Zimbabwe. Forget the careful language, the diplomatic hedging, the coded Shona instructions about sideshows. The press conferences declaring unity while the party fractures in real time. What landed in Zimbabwe's political space this week sounds nothing like any of that. It sounds like men who have decided they have nothing left to lose by telling the truth. And when men like that start talking, every government on this continent should sit down and listen very carefully. His name is Henry Muchena, retired Air Marshal. Henry Muchena, a man who rose to the highest commissioned rank in Zimbabwe's Air Force.
There are citizens who are even taking their constituents MPs to court, opposing the process without their views. And I believe those citizens are also in the same direction as we are. View is still the same, but we believe that the consultations that were done did not cover the majority of the people. And the people will need to be consulted so that they buy in if an amendment is going to take place. It has to be the people's buy-in. As I mentioned earlier, there are people that are taking their constituent MPs to court. And I'm sure those MPs are reflecting on how to respond to that. And with those responses from the MPs, we expect to see an approach that will take into account the constituent grievances and so. My message to the parliamentarians is simple. Simply for them to consider also the concerns of their constituents.
A man whose career in Zimbabwe's security establishment is not a matter of political affiliation, but of documented, decorated institutional service. He did not send a tweet. He did not give a radio interview. He did not appear on a panel discussion where analysts debate what things mean. He issued a statement, formal, structured, signed, on behalf of Zimbabwe's security and civil service veterans, and the opening line left absolutely no room for misinterpretation. We warn, do not betray the people. 4 words of warning, 4 words of instruction. From the men who built Zimbabwe's security architecture to the politicians currently dismantling its constitutional one. Now, let us walk through what this statement actually says, because every sentence deserves its own moment. The veterans accuse certain figures of prioritizing personal enrichment over constitutional duty. Personal enrichment over constitutional duty. This is a retired air marshal of betrayal, of leaders who have confused their own financial interests with the interests of the nation they were sworn to save. It is the language of a court-martial applied to civilian political leadership, and coming from where it comes from, it lands with the force of exactly that. Then the statement turns philosophical, and in doing so, it becomes even more powerful. The Constitution, they say, belongs to the public, not to any individual, not to any political party, not to any benefactor. 3 nots, 3 deliberate exclusions, 3 categories of people who have been claiming ownership of Zimbabwe's constitutional process who are being publicly told, This does not belong to you, any individual. That is the president who wants to extend his own term. Any political party, that is ZANU PF, which controls parliament and is using that control to push through an amendment that serves its own structural interests. Any benefactor, that is the tenderpreneurs and politically connected businessmen whose relationship with political power has made their names synonymous with state capture, whose wedding gifts total $20 million while the country owes $23 billion in debt, whose proximity to the constitutional amendment process is not coincidental, benefactor. A single word that contains the entire story of Zimbabwe's political economy. The veterans call the constitution the supreme expression of the Zimbabwean people's will, forged through the sacrifices of the liberation struggle. And here is where the statement becomes weaponized against the very party that has always used liberation struggle credentials as its ultimate shield. Because the liberation struggle is ZANU PF's founding argument. Its historical claim to authority, its answer to every challenge and every criticism. We fought for this country. This is our struggle, our sacrifice, our legacy. And now the men who actually lived that struggle are turning around and saying, the constitution your struggle produced does not belong to you to rewrite for personal convenience. You do not own the sacrifice. The people own it. And then comes the line that has made Zimbabwe stop breathing for a moment. They will not be traded away in a caucus room at a birthday party. A birthday party. Not a metaphor, not a general reference to political horse trading. A specific, documented, named event where Zimbabwe's constitutional future was apparently being parceled out among politically connected individuals over private celebrations and backroom conversations. Zvigananda. The Shona term now attached to this pattern of informal constitutional deal-making that bypasses every democratic process, every court challenge, every public consultation, every civic voice that has been fighting this battle honestly and openly. The generals know about Zvigananda. They are naming it publicly in a signed document, and they are saying it ends here. Here is what makes this statement seismic in a way that nothing else during the CAB3 battle has been. Every other voice opposing CAB3 can be framed as partisan, as interested, as having something to gain from the bill failing. Matete has civic ambitions. Maduku has political history. Chamisa has presidential aspirations. Tishabangu has his own complicated factional interests. Even Chiwenga's opposition can be read through the lens of his own succession calculations. Every single opponent of CAB 3 can be painted with the brush of personal interest. Retired Air Marshal Henry Muchena and the veterans who stand behind him cannot. What does a retired Air Marshal gain from issuing a public constitutional warning? What promotion is he seeking? What tender is he protecting? What political ambition is he advancing? What factional position inside ZANU-PF is he securing? None. He gains nothing. He risks professional legacy. He risks the comfort of retirement. He risks the relationships built over decades inside an institution that values loyalty and discretion above almost everything. And he spoke anyway. Because there are things that matter more than comfort, more than legacy management, more than the careful preservation of relationships with people doing things you know are wrong. The Constitution is one of those things. And when a man of his standing decides the Constitution is worth the risk of speaking, it means the threat to that Constitution has become real enough, serious enough, and immediate enough that silence is no longer a morally available option. That is the twist. That is the shock. Not the content of the warning, but the identity of the men delivering it. Zimbabwe is not processing this statement the way it processes ordinary political news. It is processing it the way a family processes the moment when the oldest, quietest, most respected member of the household finally raises their voice after watching the household tear itself apart with a silence that is louder than any previous noise. On social media and in political circles, the statement has been shared with a reverence that reflects its source. Because Zimbabweans understand the culture of the institution Muchena came from, they understand what it takes for a man from that background to put his name on a document like this. They understand that this is not a protest. It is not a campaign. It is not political positioning. It is a warning from men whose warnings have historically preceded significant events. Regionally, diplomats and political analysts are adding this statement to a rapidly growing file of evidence that Zimbabwe's constitutional crisis has reached a depth that cannot be managed through press conferences about sideshows and declarations of unchallenged leadership. When the security establishment's own veterans begin issuing constitutional ultimatums using the same moral authority that the ruling party has historically monopolized, the international community's assessment of Zimbabwe's stability changes, not dramatically, not immediately, but permanently. Because files like this do not get closed, they get referenced in future funding decisions, in debt relief negotiations, in governance assessments that determine whether Zimbabwe gets the $2.7 billion it needs to unlock its development future. The general's statement is not just a political document. In the context of Zimbabwe's economic crisis, it is a governance signal. And governance signals at this level have consequences that stretch far beyond the parliamentary vote on CAB3.